Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Slant 3D podcast, the show about 3D printing and our place inside the industry. Today, we're going to be talking about $15.8 billion. And by the way, it's our 100th episode. We have broken through. We are one of the few podcasts to have survived to this point. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But then we'll also go through some funding rounds that everybody has been doing and ending off with a discussion topic around everything is broken. A little bit on tariffs and a few other pieces of news. But before that, let's go ahead and pay the bills. This episode is brought to you by Teleport. Teleport is our 3D print-on-demand app. You are able to get access to our giant 3D print farms for free just by signing up for Teleport. Expand your Etsy business, grow your Etsy business, start your Etsy business. Or you can do it on Amazon, eBay, TikTok Shop, or any other e-commerce site that you happen to use. What Teleport allows you to do is get out of the work of having to run your own print farm, changing nozzles, finding out what the best machine is, ordering filament. All you have to do is upload your model, match it to the listings inside of your store, and then whenever you get an order, we will print it and ship it straight to your customer for you. So check out Teleport today over at slantpod.com. Alrighty then. So, first piece of news. Restore 3D raises $38 million as it prepares to commercialize 4 fully 3D printed product lines. So, Restore 3D is I'm going to say it's a medical device company. They're making 3D printed shoulder joints, elbow joints, kneecaps, those kind of things. Which is a really good application for 3D printing. But going into it just a little bit more, Restore 3D is also working to commercialize its iTotal Identity 3DP porous cementless total knee system, which has been designed for optimal coverage and precise alignment. Its Kinos modular stem total ankle system, meanwhile, has been optimized for delivery through an anterior approach. And finally, the Velura 3DP porous acetabular system is a next-generation porous hip cup designed to promote osteointegration by incorporating tidal technology. Bone parts that you can implant as joint replacements, and then people's bones will grow into them. 3D printing has been really great for this because the metal 3D printed parts that these guys are doing and the ceramic parts that they're doing are able to be biocompatible so that your body will absorb them and they basically merge into the bone over time. And the really complex geometry that you can make with 3D printing makes that viable. A lot of this stuff has been, the 3D printed body parts world has probably been one of the most profitable for a long time. And a $38 million raise, generally that means that they're about a $380 million company, give or take. They're a medical device company, so the multiples change. But it's just proof of like the value of 3D printed stuff out there, even though, yes, these are body parts. They're metal body parts and hip replacements and those kind of things. They are still indicative of where the technology is able to go. And medical devices are, yes, a specialty, but you can go broader than that. So there's a lot of value still to be had in the 3D printing world, even though the general industry is sort of lackadaisical right now. And this is also an excellent example of applications being useful for everybody. Okay. Next piece of news. 3D printing grows to $15.9 billion in 2024 amid shifting industry dynamics. Metal AM. So this was a report that came out doing last quarter's results. Metal AM brought in $5.58 billion for the year, with $1.45 billion generated in Q4 alone. Polymer AM, this is Bamboo Lab, those kind of guys, remained the largest hardware and materials category with $7.8 billion in annual revenue, $2 billion of which came in the final quarter, which doesn't really matter because if you have $8 billion for the year and $2 billion came in the last quarter, that's not even really a Christmas spike, even though there is a Christmas spike. So I feel like there's a skew here where consumer 3D printing still hasn't caught up, even though we know consumer 3D printing in like the polymers world is somewhere between $3 and $4 billion. And most of that comes in Q4. But I'm surprised that it's not skewing these numbers here. While both markets showed quarterly gains, they did not fully compensate for earlier slowdowns, which were attributed to deferred capital expenditures and persistent economic uncertainty. Right. Last year was down for most large companies selling stuff, Stratasys, 3D Systems, that kind of thing. So the rebound in Q4 explains why it was a bounce, even though the rest of the year was a little bit slow. But again, proportionally, $8 billion in total revenue for polymer projects, and $2 billion of it came in Q4. That doesn't sound like a rebound. That sounds like an even distribution. Metal, I've talked about metal before. I don't really much care for it right now. I don't think it's very ready. But metal right now makes really high value parts. So like rocket nozzles and freaking plane parts and that kind of thing. So even though it's much lower volume and lower machine deployment rates, the value over there is really high. So it's able to be $5.5 billion, even though metal is something that is still like commonly asked for and people are exploring and would like to find, but hasn't really hit like product market fit yet. I think this is incredibly encouraging because $8 billion for polymer is nothing. That's itty bitty. And the $5.5 billion for metal is also itty bitty. So the market has so much room to grow. Right now, based off this report, they were expecting it to get to about $33 billion by 2033. So a doubling here over the next 8 years or so. That's about right. The 3D printing market in general grows somewhere between 15 and 20% per year. So that's a double is perfectly doable in 7 to 8 years. They probably are presuming that there's some sort of leveling off that's going to happen. I don't think that's the case. 3D printing has lots of room to run, and the fact that we're a $15 billion market working in two separate industries that collectively are multi-trillion-dollar industries, like metal machining and plastics manufacturing, trillion-dollar industries individually. So, and if 3D printing is able to absorb any of that, well, which we're going to do because it's just a better way of making stuff, the industry is going to grow a lot. Okay, moving on, next piece of news. Tariffs. So yeah, tariffs. We did kind of a brief video on tariffs. I'm not going to dwell on them. I don't care. Here's the thing. From an operational standpoint, if any part of your business is dependent upon what a politician decides to do on any given time, any given day, year, administration, whatever, you have a really unstable business. So try to build a business that does not have that instability. Now, yes, having tariffs increase the cost of whatever your goods are by 25+% is a hit to be felt, and that's a big one for any given business. But again, there are crises like these all the time. They're just generally not as public. So companies have to be robust enough to operate within these things. Now, from our own perspective, Slant 3D is probably net helped by the tariffs. Yes, we have things that we import, some things that we import are around machinery and chips and those kind of things that will go up. But ultimately, we are a manufacturer inside of the United States who's reasonable at our job, so we can take on extra work. We also we also manufacture our own material, which is fully U.S. sourced and based. So Tangled is fine. Tangled, I don't think is really helped by the tariffs. We're just not hurt by the tariffs. The fact that Chinese-made filament is slightly more expensive than ours. They go from $10 or $12 to $15 or whatever it happens to be. Our stuff is $10 per kilogram. So Tangled filament is $10 per kilogram. The difference between $15 and $10 in the consumer brain is not that much. $10 is kind of a magic number, but for the normal average person who's not bargain hunting, 15, 10, whatever, cup of coffee difference as far as buying stuff. So it's not like it's a radical competitive advantage for us because consumer behavior won't change that much with a $2 to $3 change in a $10 item. Especially for 3D printing, which is a hobby, so people's budget is different and blah, blah, blah. Print farms might increase with us. So if you're a print farm, and actually we have print farms buying a bunch of Tangled right now, stop it. No, don't stop it. But you guys are messing up our supply chain. We're going along. We're like, yeah, here's all the subscribers. Then somebody comes through and messes up our production schedule. We'll get to Tangled here in just a moment. Yeah, we'll talk about Tangled a little bit more here. But tariffs, ultimately, we are indifferent to them. They don't create a radical advantage. and they don't create a radical disadvantage in any way for Slant 3D or our various businesses. We would like to capitalize on them more and do a judo move on this, but at the same time, they're moving around all the time. By the time you guys got this, tariffs have probably changed again. So I don't care that much about the situation because when it's so indeterminate, you can't strategize around it or operate around it. So you don't make any decisions in the week. If something can't hold, if something cannot exist for a period of time, it's not going to exist for that much longer. And that uncertainty is not terribly useful to operate a business around. Excuse me. Okay. Okay. So updates now on Tangled. So Tangled. We just expanded the team for it. We're also expanding production capacity for it. We're dedicating another extruder to Tangled to keep caught up with stuff or to get caught up with stuff. But the thing right now, the bottleneck that we're dealing with primarily is spools. So we have a manufacturer who makes our 3 kg spools. And I have talked about this before. I think I talked about this last week. But the spools, we order, they give us a lead time. We give a little bit of buffer on that lead time, and then we order it. They make these spools with molding, and the molds are broken, and the machine is broken, and everything else. And I commiserate with them because I understand how machinery and factories work and that kind of stuff, and something is always broken. But this is always broken. Every time we have ordered spools from these folks, they have been late or delayed because some machine was broken. That I consider to be operationally bad. Like, they're not new problems coming up. It's the same problem coming up repeatedly, which means that they're not learning or getting better. Now, I'm not that surprised about that because we almost have to pay this company via fax. Like, they're not super progressive in their operations. But they're molding our spools, and the mold is slowing us down. And yes, I know I run a printer factory and we can print it. We can't print the 3 kg spools. They're too big, and I don't want to print the 3 kg spools because molding is the right thing for that. It is the exact same object over and over again forever. Don't need to use 3D printing for that. It's not a highly designed product. But we are shopping, but it's causing a delay because literally we had to actually, as of right now, we'll be at the bottom and orders will start accumulating because we don't have any more large spools to spool up 3 kg orders. Plus news, we'll probably be releasing 1 kg here again and getting them out of pre-orders because those did come through. To be fair to the company, when they did create this delay, they offered to do a partial shipment, and they're spotting the partial shipment, which I deeply appreciate because sometimes they haven't done that on these delays and that kind of thing. So that's good of them to not make us foot the whole problem, even though it's their problem. They're trying to make it right and get something out to us, which is I do appreciate. Okay, Tangled. Sorry. Well, Tangled. Nobody really here really knows or cares about Tangled. Tangled is our e-commerce website where we were selling stuff. In order to focus more heavily on Teleport and make sure our customers are doing good, we have deprecated Tangled, and it's currently offline so that we don't have other systems. Like, the company is focusing down more and more, so we're pruning chunks of the company. And folks who have been working on Tangled will go be able to help out with Teleport and that kind of stuff too. Let's see. Teleport. Teleport is fine. Since we released Prize last week, Prize right now, if you want to start up a store for this month, if you start up an Etsy store in this month, you have 30 days to get it to $1,000 in sales. And if you do that, we will pay you $1,000. Good opportunity. This is the chance to get started if you haven't gotten started. That all being said, since we released the Prize, a bunch of people started signing up for Teleport and prototyping and that kind of thing. So there was this surge of demand, which is slightly delaying we're not delaying, but like pushing to the outer edge of fulfillment times, like the 4 to 5 days. Some orders are going in and out to that because like people will order 10 parts and one of them is impossible. And then we got to try to print it and fix it and then also communicate with them how to fix it and that kind of stuff too. It just creates a lot of slowdowns while also having a lot of volume. So delivery times are nudging up around probably average of about 3 days or so right now. Should be ahead of that here by soon. Like we're very nearly caught up. So there's all of that. If you want help with teleport and that kind of stuff, again, the Reddit community. The Reddit community is really good. We've got great folks over there who are helping out, who are part of the community, as well as us able to hang out a little bit more. The Reddit has replaced the Discord. The Discord is dead for reasons that I've talked about in the past, but the Reddit is replacing it. And yeah, if you have a question over there, go ahead and ask it, and somebody should be able to get back to you pretty darn well. Yeah, there's a good forum over there. And by the way, yeah, thank you to everybody who's been engaging with the community. It's been really cool to see how that goes. And yeah, the Reddit is much more dynamic than the Discord, because the Discord got into these just cycles of chatting about a silly thing for an extended period of time. But that's Teleport. Teleport is, yeah, I don't have any other major announcements on Teleport. There's going to be some deployments going on in there. So we're pushing out all the stuff we've been working on the last 3 months. Most of it will be invisible to y'all, but might see some intermittency as we're deploying those chunks of stuff. Yeah, we're updating to version 3 of the API. Everything right now has been running on version 2. So V3 will be the primary through thing on there. And then once that's fully deployed and we're all happy with it, we will release documentation on version 3 API so that any developers who are building stuff can go ahead and get what they need there and expand on that. All right, discussion topic. In a 3D printing business, everything will go wrong. Yes, everything will go wrong. In any business, everything will go wrong. And anything that is currently going right will eventually go wrong. This is what people really don't understand about starting a business. Many people have this very idealized version of like, we're going to get to a product and then that product's going to be amazing and we're going to make $1 bajillion. And no part of that has ever occurred ever. No one has had that sort of skyrocketing success without just a massive number of fires burning in the background that they are dealing with. So the reason everything will go wrong is because we live in the universe and we are humans. And companies are things that exist in the humans and are populated by humans. If you are in the context of a 3D printing business, because that's where I'm coming from, you're running a manufacturing business, which means that you are dealing with physics and friction. Any machine that is currently operating will eventually break down. Any machine that is currently operating will eventually break down, stop, need to be replaced. Anything that is currently working well will eventually go out of skew or out of tune. And you are in a constant state of plate spinning in order to make sure that machinery is maintained, repaired, upgraded continuously, faster than it breaks down. This is shown on your books as depreciation of machinery. But in any sort of business, yes, everything is constantly breaking. And then even worse, if you are in a business where you are designing your machinery, you are in a state of constant learning, because since machinery only breaks down at the rate of friction, then you will also do not learn the mistakes you made until friction takes its toll. And you're like, we need to fix that and upgrade the design going forward. So everything will be broken just because people didn't grease it. And then over time, it will eventually break because you will learn what was wrong. Operationally, everything will be broken because this is where you're dealing with humans. There will always be someone sick who is out late so that you ship things late. There will always be people who become very important and quit or die or move or have families and so on and so forth. So there's always that. The business is being held together. Well, let me push that off to a little bit of why the business is being held together. But people, you will be working with suppliers, and If you have a dozen suppliers, one of them will always be late or behind. All of these notes are why it's so important to be as simple as possible and do as few things as possible. Because each time you add in another component, another feature, another supplier or product or SKU, you are increasing the risk of something going wrong. Because the more components, the more pieces you have in the system, the more probability, the higher the chance that something will go askew and take the whole thing down with it. If you're running an assembly line, if you are missing a screw at the top of that assembly line, the rest of it will not be built because you cannot do anything after that screw until that screw shows up. So you want to simplify your business down as much as possible so that there is few objects that can break it. And also, as a startup, the simple fix to all of this stuff is redundancy. Well, have a spare for everything. Have a spare machine, have a spare person, have a spare supplier, so on and so forth. That is only doable in old established industries. If you are in a startup, or if you are designing a product, or if you're poor, which is again, startup, you do not have unlimited resources in order to create redundancy throughout the entire system. You have to get done what you can get done with what you have. The only thing that you do have slightly, I'm not even going to say slightly redundant because it's not, is time. And this is where small businesses get stuck because the owner or the founding team starts trading their time to solve these problems. They start saying, somebody's out sick today, I'm going to go do that job, I'm going to help pack boxes. But that means that they're not doing what their job is, which is like bring on investors or improve the product or whatever it happens to be. So all of this rot spreads and it absorbs other people into it. So, and the only way of getting out of this is either build redundancy, which means you spend more money to get yourself up and over the hump and get past the duct tape to something that is more reliable and operates better and more efficiently, or simplify and cut stuff down, which people really hate to do because downsizing a company or cutting off a section or killing a product feels like failure or feels like a risk, because if you have two product categories and this one's doing pretty good and this one's okay, you'll keep the okay one around for a while, even though it causes more problems and just does okay. But you're like, we can't kill it because then this has to carry the whole thing and we have a single point of failure. That's kind of an interesting thing too. It is probably better to have a single point of failure than to have an overly complex system. Because the single point of failure, yes, if it goes down, everything goes down. But in an overly complex system, if anything goes down, the whole thing goes down. And with a really complex system with all the things in it, in a really complex system, you don't know what will go down. You will be surprised by problems all the time. In a simplified system where you have a single point of failure, you can have a person staring at that who knows everything about that thing to make sure that it doesn't fail. So it's somewhat counterintuitive because the auto response of everybody is to build redundancy, and you do, but to build more stuff in order to create more stability. But actually, by creating more stuff, you create more instability because there's just more things that can pop up and break. Whereas if you just do one thing, do it really well, and yes, it may be fragile, much like a ceramic pillar, a wine glass is really, really brittle. It can be broken very easily, but it is also stupidly strong. A person can stand on top of a wine glass perfectly, and it will hold them up so long as they don't bend it. So that really focused intentionality is risky, but it is very strong in its core area. And since you're focusing on it, you should be able to keep it contained and know how it operates so that it does not break. Whereas the large, messy system with a lot of options and ways of paying the bills, which, by the way, I am completely guilty of here in this standpoint. Slant 3D is a 3D printing company. We have to constantly fight against shiny things and opportunities that might be necessary in order to pay the bills. But we have to ensure that they do not increase complexity inside of the organization. Because each time you take a new client, each time you take a new job, each time you build a new machine, each time you add a new system, you are increasing the chance of something breaking. So you need to cut that all down and reduce it and eliminate it as much as possible. Yeah, that stuff. So if you are starting a business, everybody has this presumed idea that you'll get to some answer and then it'll all work perfectly, and that never occurs. Even if you're Apple or the best company in the world, whatever it is, you will eventually be broken, because even if you are really good at what you do, the rest of the world is moving and doing other stuff too. So if you are good at what you do, the world moves on past you and you're good at what you do and you're the best horse rider from 1920 while everybody else is driving cars. So everything is going to break. Everything is going to go wrong. Nothing is going to work as expected. You have to prepare when starting up a business to do everything twice. You try to avoid it, but you're going to eventually do everything 2-3 times or over and over again forever. How do you deal with this? Number one, the failure of a product or system is not the failure of the business or the person. It is an experiment. It is a piece of research. It is something you tried and then you learned from. And then you be okay with that. And then you also have the expectation. You have no expectation. You have no expectation that anything will be successful. And therefore, when it's unsuccessful, it doesn't break you. And then when something is successful, it doesn't give you a big head. So, if I was to sum this all up, if you are going to start a business and you have any expectation that all of it's going to go right and fall out correctly, you are immediately wrong and you're going to be disappointed, especially in manufacturing. You think that you're going to draw a napkin sketch, send it to a supplier or manufacturer, and then the perfect item is going to show up. That never occurs because you don't have a precise enough idea and you don't have enough expertise and you haven't learned and you haven't gone through the iterations. Everything you do will have to be done a couple of times. You're going to hire a bookkeeper to do it because they've always been an accountant, but then they do something weird with you or they retire and quit. Whatever it is, everything will go wrong. And you have to be ready and prepared for that and be willing to just push on through it and keep on rolling and plan for it so that your organization is robust enough to take it. You don't expect that the whole thing will catch fire, but you're ready when it does. You don't hope for it. You don't make everybody walk on eggshells thinking everything's going to break, but you are ready when it does so that you don't freak out when it happens. So, yes, ultimately, if you are starting a business, particularly in manufacturing, but really in any business, everything will break eventually, because we live in a world with rot and rust and friction and people. And all of those things contribute to stuff breaking and going wrong, but they also are part of building something really awesome. And it is possible to build something really awesome and learn how to spin those plates so that you create something that's wildly impressive and cool. So that's my notes on that. Okay, moving on into questions. Questions every week. We do questions. Anybody can comment down below, question : whatever your question is, and then we will run through and read through as many of them as we can possibly find. So let's see here. Let's get on in here. Also, by the way, this is within the context of the 100th episode. We're going to do something here at the end, so stick around for that, and we're going to show off something that's kind of a nifty upgrade for what we have been doing before. I think you guys are going to like it. Partially, it's coming along, but yeah. All right, here we go. Comments, questions. Here we go. This is the one I want. All right. First question coming up. Let's see here. What do you think about the Belt 3D printers? Would they be good for automated mass printing? The Belt printers have been around for a long time. We actually, version 13 of our machines, we experimented with Belt printing, and it never went into production. Belt printers don't work. The main reason being, there's a lot of subtleties to them for why they don't work. But the biggest reason that, in my mind, is just the fact that they're overly complex. And the fundamental feature that they provide can be done with no moving parts. So I don't care for belt printers. But somebody's welcome to go out there, try them, and say, Gabe doesn't know what he's talking about. But that's fine. Question about the competition. The 30-day countdown begins once I open an Etsy shop and connect it to Teleport, right? So if I were to wait until the end of the month to do that, will my 30-day countdown begin from that date? Yes. We will give you 30 days from the sign up for the next 30 days. Well, from the next 30 days from when prize was announced a week ago. So you've got 3 weeks to connect to Teleport, and then you have 30 days from that connection point. We realized that there was some ambiguity in that. But yes, we're effectively, you kind of get 60 days if, you're doing it smart. So you can do that, and you can game the system, and that's a thing we left in there, and that's okay. But yeah, if you can do that, go ahead and do it. Please share ideas for lithophane geometry strategy that avoids infill. I'm trying to 0.2 millimeter cylinders with 1 millimeter gaps between them. It's not great. I'm not sure about your geometry there, but as far as doing lithophanes, just make sure that it's thin enough. A lithophane should not have any feature thicker than 1 millimeter. And that way with a 2-line wall, you can technically go up to like 1.6 millimeters. Because then with a 2-bead wall, you will have 4 walls that are fully solid inside of there, and you won't have any infill. So yeah, a lithophane shouldn't have any infill. You can go down from basically 0.5 millimeters, which is a single line width, up to 1.6, which is 4 line widths, and then you won't have any infill. That is the way to do it. That's the easiest way to do lithophanes through our system if you're doing stuff on Teleport. Question from Jason Black 7218. I have been seeing a good bit about bricklayers. What is your take on this? Is this something that Teleport might do in the future to help make functional parts stronger? They'll be implemented, but they really don't make a fundamental difference in it. And the strength of 3D printed parts is much more dependent on the geometry of the part than on the print settings themselves. Bricklayers help, and they're not bad. And I am so happy that there are these YouTubers and everybody else who are developing and deploying these methodologies for improving 3D printed part strength, because it is really useful to help get closer to like that isotropic kind of feature. Bricklayers, I have no doubt, will get into Teleport at some point. But you should never design a part to where it's dependent on slicer settings. Your part, by this very own design, should be robust and reliable. So like this piece does not need support because all the angles were put at the correct angle to not need support, as opposed to needing to be printed upside down where there's support inside of there. Those types of things. If your part requires bricklayers in order to be reliable, there's other issues with the part. Or you're at the very extreme of engineering, which if you're at the very extreme of engineering, bricklayers are not going to push you necessarily over the edge. So that. Question from generic 0000. How is Lulzbot still in business? I say that while looking over at our TAS 6. Other than James Brutton, who is sponsored, this is the first time I've heard the name Lulzbot uttered in a YouTube video in years. Other stuff. Lulzbot, I can't speak to them. I know John Oloft and the guys over there who run it. Lulzbot is a U.S. manufacturer of 3D printers. And at this moment, I know that is a competitive advantage because there are organizations that have to have U.S.-based machines in order to be operational. And then, to be fair, like I was on the Lulzbot site the other day, and like they have a very good e-commerce presence and that kind of thing too. So there's value to their systems. Beyond that, you'd have to talk to them. or do your own evaluation. I don't know how any business is still in business. I can guess and presume and that kind of stuff. But yeah, Lulzbot, they were bought out. Aleph Objects was bought out 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And now, yeah, the company that owns Lulzbot now is doing this stuff, and they're active in the community. And like I said, they sponsored James Brutton along with 3D Fuel, and I think 3D Fuel still gives them material. I don't know, but yeah, I assume that's what's up. But yeah, a U.S. manufacturer of 3D printers would be like a U.S. manufacturer of drones. It is needed, from like security risks to just reliability to company policy, that kind of stuff. Question, is it safe to use PLA-CF for making a product? I saw a video where the carbon fibers got stuck in someone's skin. If it's not safe, is there a good alternative? PLA-CF is fine. The fibers and that kind of stuff can come up, but to be fair, carbon fiber in general has kind of an implicit risk to it. But as far as the fibers getting stuck in your skin, you shed your skin every other day or so. So microfibers in there are not a big deal. At the same time, I don't want to elaborate on that too much because like the health risks of particular materials and that kind of stuff are indeterminate. Make sure you wear respirators around it if you're going to sand it or do anything like that. But CF materials are fine for final materials, just like carbon fiber materials are used other places. If they shatter or break or anything else, then yes, they get like more dangerous. But most of the fibrous polymer printing polymers with carbon fiber in them break in a very non-radical manner to where it's like they don't splinter like laid up carbon fiber fiberglass, basically. So I don't consider it a problem. But it will depend on your product. Don't make a bobblehead for a baby to suck on out of carbon fiber. I wouldn't recommend that. Question. I understand Chromebooks have limitations for 3D printing. What are the essential workarounds and web-based resources I should know about to start 3D modeling and printing as a beginner? If you're using web-based 3D modeling tools like Tinkercad, or I think even Shaper is fully online but fully browser-based, use whatever thing you want. I think you can use a tablet for all of those because it's browser-based. It doesn't really matter. Fusion 360, technically online and browser-based, but it sucks up RAM like a son of a gun. So it's a question of, I don't know, actually, because I don't know how many of these softwares use this computer, the client, to offload a lot of the processing versus actually doing it all in the cloud. So it'll depend on your software. I don't have a good answer for that. Question from Clark Videos 1084. Question, you may have covered this in the past, but what steps do you take or recommend taking for air purification when putting filaments to the off-gas, more hazardous vapors? Depends on where you are, what you're doing. Put in some air filters inside of your building. Depends on what you're printing. All the things. That's a whole thing. And the validity of it is also all over the place. Yes, you're melting plastics. There's a difference between melting plastics and burning plastics. But don't print with ABS. This is a simple one. Don't print with ABS. That solves like 90% of the problems around this conversation. Don't print with ABS. There's so many other materials that are so much better. And ABS is stupid and leftover and is one of the one legacy materials that is just ridiculous that it still exists. Question, what are some ways to make PETG 3D prints more resistant to scratches? Can't. PETG, this is a thing of material hardness, and scratching is based on how hard the object is. Don't print with PETG. It's soft. So it'll just scratch up a bunch. What you could do is you could apply a texture to it like fuzzy skin or some sort of noise, and that way the scratches are not as visible. Question, my partner is looking about starting up an Etsy and selling other people's models. Is she eligible to compete? Yeah, totally. I have a Shopify store connected to Teleport with my own models, which is sitting there looking pretty and getting no traffic. I'm more interested in creating models than selling them, so I've been dragging my feet on creating an effective storefront. She would be trying her hand at taking over. I would say Etsy is better than Shopify, especially for the prize, because Etsy has built-in marketing tools. So if you don't have a marketing channel already, it is tough to do that stuff. Let's see here. But yeah, absolutely. She can start up and do Etsy and that kind of stuff. You guys could port your store over. That go crazy. Anybody is eligible for the prize. And yeah, if you're selling models, that's totally fine. Get a commercial license for the models and sell them. Or find models that are Creative Commons, all the things. Like I highly recommend people use external 3D models. Everybody has this idea that models, if I download the models from online, everybody else has that model and therefore I'm going to be competing with them. And you are, but that's only one part of competition. Business is finance and operations and strategy and customer experience and marketing and everything else. And then the product's in there somewhere. So selling the same thing as somebody else does not mean you can't sell that and be successful. Costco has Kirkland Signature Coffee right next to Starbucks and whatever, Greater Roast, whatever it happens to be. But they have a competitive advantage there. And so do the other guys, to where people buy all of them to an amount. So selling the same thing as somebody else does not mean that you're not going to make it. You just have to find other places to create value for the customer. And by the way, there's 20 million 3D models out there and only about maybe 100,000 3D printing businesses. Therefore, there is an opportunity there for people. Go find the models that other people haven't found. Scroll through Instagram until they start feeding to you automatically. Question, what are the physical limits faster 3D printing? I.e. sub 1 minute benchy type of speed 3D printing. Heating, cooling materials, yes, all them things. It's pretty much all those things. Like if you wanted to go that fast with the benchy, it's fine. The sub 1 minute benchy, sub 1 minute print. I'm not going to reference the benchy. I don't care about the benchy. But the sub 1 minute print is probably going to come from resin. Just because resin can actually hard and it's light based, so there are instantaneous capabilities there. Whereas for FDM printing, it can be faster. It can still be faster. We can start a water-cooled machine that's spraying out water just like a CNC machine does to cool the print as you're printing it down. I don't know why you would want it. I think the primary solution to speed is scale. If you have 1,000 3D printers, you make 1,000 parts in an hour, and that's very fast. So the system speed is different from the individual machine speed. I know hobbyists may not like that, but yeah, I don't think individual machines will get that much faster. I think Bamboo has probably pushed physical material limits to the limit. And the very fact that we had to create high-speed PLA, which is just really low melt temp PLA, in order to allow for the max speeds on those, is an indication of what has to be done. And if you make that material much lower temp, it will melt at room temperature. So... Foking Lit Media, question, do we have to use Teleport to print products to qualify for the $1,000 prize? Yes, you have to be a Teleport user, signed up and printing parts through Teleport, and you have to have moved $1,000 worth of merchandise through Teleport in order to qualify for the prize. Question, I want to start using Teleport. How can I register for ShipStation if I'm from other countries on their list? Should I register a U.S. store since Slant 3D is in the U.S.? Yeah, you can do that. You can register with our address. The address to use is 4600 Apple Street, Boise, Idaho. I don't mind giving that out because we have a gate and a security guard. But you can also use a VPN to get access to ShipStation. So there's plenty of ways around that. VPN, use our addresses for registering and just come from someplace else, though ShipStation might flag you for suspicious activity if you did something like that. You're accessing it from Sheboygan, and you're saying the address is in the U.S. Their security systems might flag that. That's all the questions I can spot here. I think that's most of them. Let's see. I'm pretty sure that's all of them. Yep, I think that's all the ones I can see here. If you want a question, you have to comment below a podcast with question : what your question is, and we'll try to get to them. Okay. All right. Now, one final thing, guys. 100 episodes. 100 episodes of this podcast. Only 5.36% of podcasts ever make it to 100 episodes. Only 2.4% ever make it to 200 episodes. And I'll bet we'll do that. But... thank you so much, all who have been watching the podcast. We when we did podcasts, we always kind of thought of it as kind of the low-hanging fruit sort of a video. and we're working to improve it and grow it more, but it has also been growing very naturally on its own to where I know for a fact that we are probably potentially the biggest 3D printing podcast. I'm happy to be corrected on that. I would love to know somebody else who's doing 3D printing who gets more views than we do. Because we get somewhere between 5 and 20,000 views per podcast. And that's fantastic. And that's because of you guys. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for coming along once a week here on Sunday. But in the interests of improving stuff, we have one little thing to show off here with our 100th episodes of the podcast. So, welcome to the new studio. Comment down below if there's anything that you think we ought to try out on here, and we'll be building it out a little bit more over the next few weeks, but this is probably what you're going to be seeing a lot more of here going forward. Have a great day, everybody.